My mascot.
And we should have Scott on and Dick. Okay, I didn't know Dick was gonna be remote. Hadn't heard from him.
Looks like he's resting.
You sure he's awake?
I hope he's got his hat on. They take it
Yeah.
off.
It does.
It's a tough crowd around here. Jeez.
Well, yeah, but I don't think he has his mic on, so we can't hear him.
He probably planned that.
I mean, you can't mute Dick. Not even with a computer.
Okay, so now it's recording.
All right. Scott, you can hear us? Can we hear you?
Is that to me? Yeah.
Okay, we can hear you. Dick, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, good. Good. All right, let's get this thing started.
Agenda's there, minutes are there.
Everybody have an agenda who wants one? All right, let's call this meeting to order.
7:06.
Let's figure out who's voting, who's not. All right. David?
Yep.
You're voting. Chris, you're voting.
Yep.
Sarah, you're voting.
Sure.
Scott, you're voting. And me, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we need one more.
Right there.
All right.
Are you adequately distanced from?
Well, people that we know have had their 3 shots and everything else, and they're getting COVID again. So I'm just protecting everybody else, so, and myself.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay,
As long as you're in the room.
okay.
That thing. So we have
I'm
regular, you're not voting today. Nor are you, Dick.
Observing.
But we love to hear your comments anyway. Alrighty, minutes from the October meeting?
Any changes, corrections? Any changes, corrections?
I think somebody's trying to say something.
I have one comment. The word on the acceptances for short-term rentals. Um, Let's see, on the second one for the Ramirez, it says the motion
Approved.
was approved, and the motion was accepted. Careful about the approves and the acceptance.
Got it.
Other than that, I think we're good. Any other comments? Motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay. We're good. Alrighty, we don't have a very large public today. So is there any comment among those of you who are, that for any items that are not on the agenda this evening? Hearing none, let's proceed. We've already saved a few minutes. All right.
So Mr.
I guess
Cunningham
we
is first.
recognize Dennis Cunningham.
Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you. Do you want me to take my mask off as I'm speaking, or do you want me to keep it on?
You just hang on to it.
Okay, sounds good. So,
If you wanna use
do you want me to
this,
hold that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So my name's Dennis Cunningham. I have a wife, Kelly, and 3 children, one 15-year-old, one 13-year-old, and one 10-year-old. And we recently purchased a property up on Temple Drive, which is off of Thornhill. Prior to this home, we had a place out on Hutman's Heights, up on 16, just before the National Forest. And we are here today to talk through a potential subdivision of our property at 11 Temple Drive. Before we get into the specifics, what I'd share with this group is that our family's been coming to Jackson for more than 15 years at this point. It's a place that we absolutely love and see ourselves spending a lot of time at once my wife and I retire. And so the purpose of the subdivision up on Temple Drive is really to build a home that is modern, quote unquote modern, meaning sustainable with solar power, geothermal heating, and really just sort of prepare us for the next generation of our lives. We originally purchased the house thinking that we would renovate the home that is there, and we quickly realized that it was going to be way more expensive than we originally planned. And so given the situation of the home, we've decided that we'd like to build a second home. I'm not an expert in Jackson's bylaws and how these things work, but just given the little information that I've read, and I did have a conversation with Bill Terry. Are you Bill? Okay, so Bill and I had a conversation, I guess a few weeks back, and he gave me some ideas. So essentially, Temple Drive is a private road. So when the 911, redistribution of street names and things like that went through, Temple Drive became a private road. We have more than enough frontage on that road that we would like to essentially subdivide the property. And I don't know if you all have the map. I have colored copies too, if it's easier for you to see the color copy. But what we would like to do is create a parcel of land with the original house that exists today, and then subdivide the second piece of property, which is labeled as B on the map that you're all looking at, and create a second home. We would keep, utilize the driveway that's there that goes up to the house further up on Temple Drive, and we just essentially build another sort of driveway off to the new lot that we're planning on building on. So I think, based on the amount of property that we have, based on the fact that it's a private road and we have frontage, that this should really be pretty standard in terms of the bylaws that I read through, that this shouldn't be any sort of problem. But I'm here, this is not a formal review, we haven't done any engineering plans or anything like that. The idea is to come to the planning meeting tonight to get some guidance as to how we should move forward. And if there's any concerns with what we're trying to accomplish by putting a second, not a second home, but a home on the property. And by the way, the old home or the existing house that's there today will stay, and we will renovate that once we build the other house, and keep that for family members that come up to visit and things like that, and our grandkids and so on.
Subdivision or just a building?
So it's my understanding that we can't build a second home on the property because both homes would be larger than 1,000 square feet.
It's a subdivision. Answer your question. He's considering a subdivision.
But if you told me we didn't have to subdivide, then we would gladly just build build the other house without it.
Right, but a subdivision is splitting property into two.
Correct.
Right, so is that what we're discussing, is splitting property or building a second unit on the property?
I guess what I would say, and I'd look to you guys for guidance, we want to do both. We want to build, the end goal here is to build a new home on the property. In order to meet the needs of the guidelines or the bylaws that Jackson has in place, you can't build a second home on one lot, right? Because the homes would both be larger than 1,000 square feet. So therefore, we would have to subdivide the property, which is indicated on the map that you have, and then we would build the second home on parcel B, which again would be the purpose of the subdivision. Does that answer your question?
Well, or could it be done as a, sort of a subdivision, but as a, a cluster development of sorts? I mean, would you prefer it to be two separate properties or one single cluster property? I'm not sure.
So, I mean, I want to do it whatever the easiest way to to build the home. And if we don't have to subdivide and I can just repurpose the land and call it a clustered property, I'm happy to do that too. We have no intention of selling the land or anything like that. We would keep, the goal is to keep all the property that is there. And we wouldn't build any other homes on the property as well.
I just kind of want to get clear, understand what your end goal is. There might be different ways to.
Yeah, so our end goal is to build a new home, a modern home with sustainable energy, or sustainable sort of materials and whatnot. And again, keep the house that exists today as something that our children and grandchildren could sort of, use as excess space. And certainly we would live in that while we're doing the construction on the new home.
Now, just to understand your map here,
Mhm.
there, looks like there's a lot that goes along Thornhill Road to the left of A. That is a separate lot under somebody else's ownership.
Yes.
Yes, that is.
And then there's a hashed off portion beyond that. Is that part of a lot B, or is that something else?
So that is part of my property, but it's a view easement for the small property that you were just
Yeah, and
mentioning.
if you recall, we did this review within the last year, maybe two, for that other lot to be allowed to change the lot lines and allow for the view easement.
All right.
So we did do a consideration of redesign of that, and there was some concern, as you recall, about the easements for the driveway and some other things that we discussed at that time.
So lot A is coming down with this road here, so it makes it a very small lot.
We haven't really figured out the size, but if there was a size that the smaller lot needed to be, we would adjust the engineering plans to make that possible. This is just a first draft.
Yeah, you'd have to work with an engineer who had the knowledge of the soils to make sure that you have lot A is big enough relative to soil-based lot sizing.
Mm-hmm.
B obviously is quite big, but then you would be concerned on A. And you're using frontage on as being on the private road as opposed to on Thornhill Road?
I am using private or the frontage on Temple Drive because it's a private road. And if it makes, I don't know if it makes a difference, but that blue line that goes off of the red driveway towards the right side of the property, if you will, that road is already sort of there. It's it's an old horse trail. That's, it's essentially the size of a driveway. So the idea is continue to use that and, build the house off of that driveway at some point.
Just for location, the house on Lot A, was that the house that was Bob Temple's?
That's exactly right.
Because then there's another house further up off of that, which is
Correct.
a second home.
Yep, the red driveway where it goes to the right,
Up to the Grahams?
it goes up to the Grams, exactly.
Okay. So this essentially is the lot, the big lot was Bob Temple's lot then?
Correct.
Okay.
So how many residents on Temple Drive?
There's 3 residencies, or 3 residents.
And is there an association that takes care of road maintenance and plowing and that stuff?
There's no formal association, but we do share plowing, and I do all of the maintenance myself with my own equipment.
We're in that situation, I have no idea if it's a town spec road or just a designated driveway or how it's being, I understand how it's being used, but what is the structure of the road?
So when you say structure, are you referring to the material, or are you referring to the width? I guess
Yeah.
I'm not following your questioning.
Yes, I think both.
Okay, so it is wider than your typical driveway. I don't have the dimensions, that's something we can certainly pull together. It is gravel, all the way up to the Graham property, which is the property on the far right. And then they paved essentially up a good portion of their driveway up to their house.
Okay.
And it's, again, looking through the registry of roads, post the 911 sort of requirements that came in, it is designated as a private road and not a private driveway, which is why we believe we're able to build a second home. And not a second home.
Right, well, there's 2 houses on a driveway. Private road, you can have more. So it sounds like it'll end up with, 4 residents on Temple Drive? If you build your new house.
If we build our house, there would be 4 properties on Temple Drive. But I guess the question is, would you consider, because we each have our own driveways, if that makes sense. Like each home has its own driveway off of Temple Drive. So it's not like you're sharing a driveway.
No, his point is that there's a limit of 4, and you would have 4, so you're not exceeding 4.
Gotcha. Understood.
We're trying to look at reasons why you wouldn't want to do what you're doing.
Yeah. And this is exactly why I'm here, is I'm not an expert in this area. We want to make sure before we go and start paying for engineers to start putting designs together, doing perk testing and all these things with the lot, we want to make sure that the town is supportive of it. And again, we want to do everything on the up and up. And Bill, I think you and I had a pretty, what I would consider good conversation, and you understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Question for you, the one question I had is that, and maybe if I could do one of these with this, I could see the numbers, but I can't with my glasses. Approximately how many road frontage feet do you have on B lot on Temple Drive with this, the way you have that set? Is it more than 200 feet? I assume it is.
It's definitely more than
200 feet.
more than 200 feet, but I don't know the number. My wife would probably be able to pull that.
To Sarah's point, though, earlier, the line you have drawn may be the line that you'd like to see. Potentially, that line may have to be adjusted if you talk to an engineer and they say the minimum lot size needs to be such and such in order to have it as a separate lot. And that's in the subdivision regulations. I couldn't tell you, and none of us could tell you, just taking a look at a piece of paper,
Of course.
what that ought to be, or how large it ought to be, or where that line ought to be. That would require an engineer to tell you. And then depending on where the line needs to be, then the question would be, how much frontage do you have? If you got it all the way out here, you'd have a problem.
Yep.
But probably not based on what I see here, but it would certainly shrink that possibly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other comments, things or concerns, issues?
I can barely read anything here. What's the total size of A and B together?
It's 18 and a half acres.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a big lot.
Yeah, that's big.
And if it means anything, the property to the left of A is about 2.5 acres, I think, 2.5, 3 acres. And then the Grahams, who are to the right of us, they have, I want to say, 20 plus acres.
And just for your information, we looked at this property that is to the left of A, between the area there that's the easement for the view. And there were some adjustments made in order to ensure that before the property was sold, that the person in this lot in front got what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And some,
So we are, we've been in lots of conversations with the property owners, and they're aware of our plans, I would say. And just to be clear, this is the latest property map, the drawing, so
Yes.
it's got all the appropriate cutouts and carve-outs that the town required in order to make that happen.
any other comments? Again, this is not by no means,
Yeah, I mean, our plan would be to bring back formal engineering plans and site drawings and things like that as we got further along. But we really didn't want to go through the process of doing that until we at least had a conversation with the town, made sure that our interpretation of the bylaws and the guidelines that have been set forth by the town are, that we're, accurately interpreting them.
mhm.
And then if that's the case, and we sort of have a general consensus that, yeah, move forward, the next step would be to bring formal plans back to this forum and continue the discussions that way.
Scott, just listening to your comment, did you think there was another way of getting at this?
Sorry, were you addressing me, Bill?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, this plan's not available online, right? I'm not able to see the maps.
We did send it to everybody.
Okay, sorry, I didn't look. So, is there 400 feet of frontage to be divided up into two 200-foot segments?
There's more than 400 feet. I think it's something like 800 feet.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it sounds like it could go, either way. It's more whether the property owner wants to, create more of a campus-style property with, a cluster development style, or two separate properties. I mean, I guess it's.
I guess I'm not.
I'm not sure what the cluster.
I'm not familiar with anything in our regs that would allow the campus kind of thing that you're describing.
Well, it could be a cluster development of 2 units.
Pardon?
Cluster development.
A cluster development?
It's still a subdivision, but it would be a different type
So-
of association. Separate.
So what's if you wouldn't mind helping me understand, what is the difference between a true subdivision and the cluster development? Because if that meant we don't need to subdivide the land, that would be our preferred approach. But I need to understand what the limitations are by doing a cluster development.
It's still a subdivision. Less frontage is required for the, less total frontage is required. There would be some portion of it that would be put into common land. But it's, in some family situations, like my own, for example, it made more sense to create a, you know, sort of family piece of land that allowed, you know, different, you know, or multiple units, as opposed to a completely, you know, separate piece of the property. It's one way of, you know, it's one way of hoping to continue to stay in the family, if that's, you know, sort of the intent.
That is most definitely the intent. I guess I wasn't familiar with the cluster development, and I don't, in reviewing the regulations or bylaws, I didn't see anything about that. So,
Yeah, I
Dave,
mean,
you've
it's
got
not
zoning
normal,
ordinance
it's-
there.
there's 2 units, but
Yeah,
I
it's
don't see why you couldn't.
6.1.5 is
Yep.
cluster. It's a formula, but I still don't understand.
Scott, if you did a cluster with common land, if you wanted to, say you changed your mind and you wanted to sell the original lot, which unfortunately you don't have the map, wouldn't that make it more difficult to do that?
No, I mean, you're just going through the subdivision process again, and there's all the, you know, the costs and, you know, maybe some more engineering work associated with it, but it's, you simply be dividing that land up. I mean, we're looking at potentially, you know, that would be a possibility in our situation where, you know, it's maybe only 2 of us that are gonna sit on the cluster development that we now have. But, you know, I would say that you ought to go the route you think is going to be the long-term goal.
yeah, I mean, clearly, I think we need to do our homework and look at the differences between the 2 subdivision types. And we'll come back to this group.
Zoning ordinance, I assume this is online.
Yeah.
I assume that, yeah, it's what you've been referring to.
Mhm.
Section 8 is about cluster single-family development and multifamily. And essentially it is, instead of taking a big piece of land and dividing it up into separate lots, you leave it as one big piece of land, and that land, let's say that it's by the minimum lot size by soil type, which is section 6, that you could get, let's say, 4 houses on that one piece of land. Instead of dividing it up into 4 separate lots, what you do is cluster the 4 houses in one area and then designate the rest of the land as the open space.
Okay.
And so that means that you don't have to have your separate little blocks of land. And it's more like so you would, if you had a number of houses, you might end up with an association that would take care of like the roads and other things that are common to everybody.
Mhm.
In your case,
Technically speaking, I don't believe that the units need to be clustered. In our case, each unit has a 50-foot radius from the center of the house. It's the land that's, you know, that's sort of associated with that particular unit, and then the common land is the land in between those units. But you do need a certain percentage of common land. No, it's another way of.
I appreciate the insights.
So you have multiple options,
Yep,
and either which way, you're gonna have to talk to an engineer,
yep.
and you'll have to come back to us for approvals. And so you need to decide what it is you really wanna do and how you wanna do it.
Yep, but am I correct in saying that the vision we have and what we're trying to accomplish is possible? Assuming we follow the bylaws and use either cluster development or a subdivision. Is there anything else here that
you
is?
have the zoning ordinance, and then there's also the subdivision regulations, which is another set of
Which is
regulations.
online.
Yep.
And both of those are online at the town website.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions, or are we good?
We're good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tim.
meet you, Bill.
We can meet you in person, yes. Yeah. Alrighty.
Okay,
Oh, boy. Next.
well, next, we have the groundwater protection district regulations. Sarah sent out.
In case you guys want color copies.
And I just like to say this was much easier to read than the previous version.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
I hope that everybody was able to at least read it through. If you have any questions about it. There was the webinar last night, which I think gave a really good background. The only name I recognized was Chris's name on it.
Well, I was on that, and I will never drink a glass of water again. It's just, I'm gonna stick with beer and wine. No, it was informative. There's like 300 contaminants possible in the water, 100 of which they have sort of limits, like 1 part per jillion, and 200 that they don't. But it struck me as how really delicate this whole system is. I mean, it's just, you spill a gallon of gas near a well and, you could really screw it up. So I think what I got out of that was people really need to be educated on how fragile and how careful we need to be.
And for those of you that weren't able to watch the webinar, it was recorded and is going to be available. And I talked with Tara Schroeder, who is the one from Green Mountain Conservation Group that was hosting the webinar. And she said that she'll be sending a link, at least all of those who are signed up for the webinar, and I also think it will be on their website. So as soon as I get that link, I'll send that around to everyone. And also there's going to be some more additional information that Pierce Redroad was going to send to her that she will also send out to us. But what he did during the seminar was first talk about, what the situation is as to why we have, what the need is to have a groundwater protection ordinance, and that trying to protect the drinking water from contamination. He did give a few examples of a place where there was contamination for the drinking water and what was involved in cleaning it up and the expense and the effort and so on. So it is very illustrative of why you need to have these protections in place. And then there's we have to decide on what the actual district is, and the way it's recommended is to include all of the wellhead protection areas for public water supply wells, and then also the stratified drift aquifers. And the wellhead protection areas for public water supplies that information is not available straight online because of 9/11 and Homeland Security, and that they don't want to publicize that generally. But if you have, if you're doing something like this, that you can get that information. And then also the stratified drift aquifers are, that has been mapped, and there is some of it in Jackson. It was in some of that other information that we got from the Groundwater Alliance or whatever that group is. So that map is kind of crude and is for the whole area, but you can see that there's a couple of tongues of the aquifer. So we're at the very edge of the aquifer, being right by the mountains. And I, today when I called Tara Schroeder, asked her, they have an example of some of the maps that were made, and I asked her, how can we get one of those made? And they for Ossipee, which has a large area of the aquifer in it, they had the planning council, it's the Lakes Region Planning Association. We're on the North Conway Planning Coast, but Lakes Region has GIS capability, and so they are able to make a map. Using GIS, you can get different layers of information layers. You know, you get the topo layers, you can get the roads, you can get the actually a tax map, property divisions, all the property lines on it, and then on top of that, you can put all of where the wellhead protection areas are, and also the aquifer. So you can make a map, and I got, I was able to copy, this is the one that they had, this is Madison, and the purple area is the aquifer, and then along with the wellhead protection areas. So you can see some of these the circles. The circles are separate wellheads protection area, and then the more sort of squiggly areas, that's aquifer with whatever wellheads are there. So they would be able to make a map like that for Jackson, and that would then allow you to say, well, the area, the colored area then is the wellhead protection district.
Is this blue the lakes?
Yes, well, that's Madison, so that'd be, was it
Yeah, so the
Silver
lakes.
Lake?
Interesting.
And so yes, they can put the lakes on, whatever you want. When you're doing GIS, you add whatever layers you want for whatever information. And the Granite database is for all of New Hampshire, all of the different resources that they have data for. So
That's okay, I was watching it, I was reading it while you were looking at it.
So we'd have to contact North Country Council to see if they have that capability. And they would know who to contact down in Concord to be able to get the information that we would need. So I was wondering how we would do this. And then I also was able to say, well, how many community wells, public water sources do we have? Obviously, we have the water precinct, which is the biggest one, but then there's about 14 others in Jackson. I can list them off if you want, if you're curious. It would
Now,
be,
these just wells that supply more than one structure?
right. They it's defined in the definitions here of a public water system is a system for the provision of public piped water for human consumption, which has at least 15 service connections or regularly services an average of at least 25 individuals daily, at least 60 days out of the year. So that means automatically Black Mountain, Ski Area, Whitney's, Eagle Mountain House, Christmas Farm. Wentworth is on the water precinct. In Thorn Hill, I think, I don't know how far up the water precinct goes. But then you have other smaller ones, Ski Meadow, Christmas Farm. You have Dana Place has a community well. Eagle Brook does. Eagle Mountain House, Ellis River Village, the High Pastures at Black Mountain, those are condos to the east. In Thorn Hill has their own. Mount Jefferson, Washington condos. Nestle Nook has one. There's one in Tyrol. Whitney's and the Wildcat Townhouse Resort Association are the ones that popped up from the DES site.
Now, that's any more than, how many houses?
More than 15,
Or more than 15?
15 service connections.
Yeah, it's quite a few, like had 4 or 5.
Yeah. So these all, the service connections are all 28 at least. Yeah, 28 is the smallest number given of those 25.
Sarah, so we would need to do a map.
Yep.
But the definitions of what we have, what you put in that would also specify which pieces specifically would be within map. In other words, people would be able to know what those are, or how would they access, how does someone know what they've got? I look at a map like that, for
You see,
example, and I might say...
All these lines are separate properties.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you would look to say, okay, this is my property there, and that part of it.
Okay. And that, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a private property or public or a business or...
Depends on how you write it. But I would think that if you had a private residence that had an old gasoline tank or heating fuel tank down, let's say it's outside and it's rotting and leaking, then just because it's a residence shouldn't keep them from
There are some that are underground too. I don't know how many, maybe they've all been eliminated by now.
I actually talked with Kevin, our building constructor. He's also the health officer, I guess. I'm not sure what all his titles are. And he was saying that he knows of several, and that there's a lot of these regulations are that are in the ordinance are there's state regulations, state best management practices, and so on. And I think as you read through it, you can see that there's some reference to them. And I know that we've talked in other instances about, well, if it's state law, why do we have to have it in our ordinance? And I think it helps. I mean, one of the points that he made last night was that in Ossipee, they were talking to some of these businesses that had contaminants, that material that they used in their business that are listed as part of the contaminants, that they had them in a large quantity, and they didn't really know what the state rules were. I think it said something like 80% of them, and that was a little shocking to me. But that's one thing that Kevin was saying, is that there's a need for education, to talk to these people, and I'm sure that most of the businesses are wanting to do it right, and to go by what the best management practices are.
Wells, I was just trying to say, when they get monitored, especially with associations, does the town, if there's a change in that well, I know of 3 Nordic Village, Whispering Brook, and there's one more. I was talking to Fran Lyons the other day, and there's been a change, and because I had a well up here that it's got this particulate in it. And he said all 3 of those wells have it, and they have to treat it. It's nothing that's necessarily harmful, but it's a change, in the wells. And I'm just wondering if that's happening in one area, is it going to extend to another area, or is it monitored?
I can't answer that, but and Kevin said that he might come tonight, but he hasn't. But he is the one that would be able to answer that as to what the monitoring is. It seems that the state is involved in sampling, chemicals, bacteriological sampling of these water sources. And in fact, if you go online, it was listed, each one of them. You can go to your, we all can, just say your well, and find out what has been, what chemicals have been tested for, and do they meet the standard.
Yeah, I think the important part here is to understand that this does not change anything. in that regard for monitoring, or it doesn't, we don't end up taking over any state responsibility for any of the monitoring. It just allows us to prompt enforcement more directly here in town. It allows us another layer of protection, if you will.
A question, Sarah, if, let's say there was an underground oil tank on private property, is it the property owner's obligation to get rid of that, or does the town, can we contribute to getting rid of that? Is there any set sort of protocol on that?
The monitoring, I can't answer that.
Okay.
That's a Kevin question.
Okay.
As to how it
My
works.
understanding, though, is that the state does have a program
That's what I was thinking.
that they support for folks who cannot afford to do that.
Because it seemed to me to be everybody's benefit to get that tank out of there.
Yeah, I eliminated mine probably 20 years ago. It was 1,000 gallons, so it was, unfortunately, it wasn't leaking.
The other area that I had highlighted in blue was the person who is required to do the, whatever inspections are involved, and also to have to sign off and to be approved of the spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan. And I had just put down emergency management officer here, but there are also other possibilities, which would be, instead of the EMD, the fire chief or the health officer. And when I talked, and Emily Benson is our emergency management director, and she read that and said, I'm not trained to do this, and the state isn't going to train me, and so on. I'm not sure I can do this. So, but when I talked with Kevin, this is much more his line. He may not know himself, be trained down to the specifics, but he says he knows who at the state level who would be able to do this, and so could direct us that way. So instead of the emergency management director there, we probably should put health officer. Or you could say agent approved by the Board of Selectmen.
I think that's the
You
way.
do that as well.
Yeah, I think that was in the draft of the part that they,
Horse location? Yeah, okay.
they did the selectmen.
Right, there was a couple places like that. Yeah, I think we need to, if we want to, move forward with this, we would need to get a map. We would need to also, all of us, read this carefully as to whether it's something that you would want. There was one thing here on the exemptions which stuck out like a sore thumb to me, where it said that the sale and transportation use of pesticides, as defined by RC, is exempt from all provisions of this ordinance. It's, oh, wait a minute, what? And the reason for that is that there are state and federal regulations, and they wanted to have that statewide, the same regulations, not a little bit here, a little bit there, because pesticides can go, once they get out and move around within the groundwater, it's not limited to one town. So it's not that they aren't regulated, it's just they aren't going to be regulated at the municipal level.
Yeah, those would supersede.
And so that's why I added the phrase, but must comply with all state and federal regulations. So that says that yes, they are being regulated.
Are we gonna try to present this to the town for our next town meeting?
That's up to the planning board to decide whether, all of this wording is something that we will want to have. We also would have to have for sure a map that shows the delineation of where the district is, so people can see whether they're affected by it or not.
Is there a cost for that map? Or?
We'd have to check, North Country Council does supply a certain amount of assistance to us, and I don't know what the contract is, do you know?
I'm sorry,
They contract with each of the
oh,
towns?
the contract, that we are a member, and they provide service to us.
So-
Sometimes it's additional charge, but for something like this, whatever the charge would be necessary to do this anyway, so we would do it.
Okay,
We have a budget, things
Yeah.
like that.
right, so even if we have to pay for it, then that's, we would have to do that. And that would be if North Country Council has GIS capabilities, which I actually would be surprised if they don't, but we can find that out with a phone call, then it would be fairly straightforward for them to do that.
Dick, in answer to your question, I think the idea would be that if we can get our act together, we would like to do this. And so we have really only a couple of hurdles. The other question I would have is, who else do we need to have take a look at this besides ourselves? Is this something we need to have either Peter Malia look at, or is it something that we should go back to the Headwater Alliance, the folks who gave this, give them an opportunity to take a look at it and see if there are any issues with your redraft, for example, that they might see that I wouldn't see, or Chris might not see, because we aren't technically astute enough.
Right, well,
There's-
the person that could also look at was Pierce Reigel, who is the head of the, let me give you his name. He is-
Who's the head of the water department? What's his name?
Okay,
Wouldn't we
Pierce.
draw them in?
The fellow who's giving the presentation last night?
No.
Yeah.
Water precinct.
Water Precinct?
Yeah, water precinct,
Yeah.
I can't remember the
Scott
name.
Hayes.
Scott Hayes,
Hayes.
yeah. Would be good for him.
Peter Malia would have to do an awful lot of research to make a intelligent decision on it, so I think we should go to another source for.
I don't disagree, Dick, that I'm asking who that,
We could have this reviewed by Pierce Reigel, who is the supervisor of DES's Source Protection Program, which is what this is all under. And he's the one who gave the presentation last night and said, find it, he can, feel free to contact him for whatever help he can give.
and they have said that they are more than willing to do so.
And also check with the local government center. They may have some knowledge or expertise with that.
The municipal center? Okay.
All right, so the timing wise, we need,
I do have a
go
question.
ahead.
I was
Kathleen.
looking at this today, and this is just a housekeeping thing. On 11, down there, 11.2, it just needs to be separated, the words.
Right, yeah, there is one where these words were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just needs to be separated, that's all. And
Right.
also on 14.4,
14.4. Yeah, I apologize for the cue, but I didn't know what number, where it would go, so I figured.
no, it's just, the words just need to be separated when you're typing
Yeah,
it
yeah,
up.
so I've already marked that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, what was the 14.4?
Yes, it was
So-
by the property, the by needs to be separated from the the. I was,
Oh, in
Yeah.
mine it is separated. but-
oh, well, this one isn't separated.
Okay, well, I,
Just so you know, just to make sure that it comes out correctly, that's all.
yeah.
Okay, if you
and
caught that, that's fine.
There's various levels of proofreading.
Mhm,
One is going through and just making sure that it makes sense
mhm.
and that it says what you want it to do. And once you've got that set, then you go through and make sure that it, there's grammar is right and all that. And then all the little stuff.
Yeah,
like
that's just little stuff, it's just,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying.
punctuation and then, and I took the time to actually put this in the format of our zoning ordinance. So if it is,
Good, okay.
if we do accept it, vote on it, the town approves it, we can just plunk it in wherever we want it to.
I just didn't want you to have 20 copies made and have that mistake in there, that's all.
Right, yeah,
Okay,
appreciate that. And any other typos you found, I've found several since I printed this out.
I'm not gonna be the one that's gonna find your typos, trust me. But I had a question on
Yeah.
the maintenance portion,
Yep.
because I did read this thing. Maybe it's more of an operational, like how does this operationalize, and that's not our focus. But are we, like the frequency of inspections, is there an issue for inspections? Because it says inspections may be required.
Mhm.
Is that more of an operational, or does it go in here like if an issue is raised that causes an inspection, or we do it annually?
That would have to be defined, I think. As to, and it may depend on the situation. In that the state does a certain amount of inspections of tanks, storage tanks and so on, where they have to be, those that are regulated. And this is getting beyond my
Yeah.
knowledge of the specifics, but I think for one, we need to check with, Kevin is probably the one who has the most knowledge of the details on it. When I was chatting with him on the phone, he was rattling off a lot of information that things that he deals with every day that I didn't know much about. So, yes. Let me flag that and see whether that needs to be defined.
All in all, I say Sarah did an excellent job.
I agree.
Oh.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
Actually, an amazing job.
Yes, Yeah.
Was this on today, or?
I sent this out about a week and a half ago.
Okay, I may have read it, but for some reason I didn't print it, but
Okay.
I'll just have to go back and print it.
Compared to the original document that we're looking at, which does one of these and one of those and like this, and you get so confused because of all the reference points, you can actually read this one and it makes sense. It follows
yeah.
from item to item, whereas the other one you read through and you go, I have no idea what the thing looks like. It's like looking at a lot of the, if you'll excuse, some of the state RSAs, where they say, well, yeah, you know, if you look at 63240, 6139, you'll know that that relative to 653 is, you know, okay unless you're, you know.
They have the exception that is in 623.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's kind of how the original was written. Whereas Sarah's is clear, it's English, it's readable, it follows from item to item. So thank
It
you.
is actually the same text that was in the law.
Really?
It's the same. I just moved things around and had to make a few changes so that it flowed right. But that's what happens when your hardwood floor is being refinished and you have to live in the basement. And you have no you have to use your husband's laptop with a smart.
Now, your basement's pretty nice, though.
Thank goodness.
It's not a basement.
So,
Anyway.
I guess the question is, can we get the map done and can we get this done in time?
Right.
Is that something that between now and our next meeting we can figure out?
I've
And
been.
The problem, it's only like 2.5 weeks. It's not long, because we're so late in
Yeah.
November.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
It's December 9th is our, it's
And
early.
as far as our public hearings schedule, we have to get that, done in January?
January.
So we still have,
What's the December?
December 9th is our next meeting.
Our next meeting. Okay, right.
we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time.
I can call North Country Council tomorrow to see if they can make the map for us and what kind of timing they need.
Right.
And, whether that's included in what they provide for us, or we'd have to, expense. I doubt that it would break the bank.
Okay.
And I can go through this again and check with Kevin, but once we have, I'd like everybody to, read it carefully and see any changes or questions that you have, and maybe you can email me and I can, or do a group email or something like that if we wanted to work on it between now and December, and I can send a copy. Well, I already sent a copy to Kevin and asked him to go through it with his suggestions, and I could also send it to Pierce Rygred and tell him, how about this for the model instead of this? Anyway.
Okay.
This is just a question for, the town does not use salt, correct?
We
only
use
use
salt.
We
stuff.
do.
Yeah, we do.
So is the town exempt from this? Because one of this says it's one of the prohibited uses is outdoor storage of road salt.
Outdoor storage, open,
So ours is in.
I don't know if
I
that's.
think it is inside.
There's a big pile of it out there, and they're also using brine now, which is salt, but somehow it's less abusive. I don't know how, but that's what they tell me.
Right.
Hopefully on vehicles.
And that's, they actually mentioned that last night in that,
Yeah, I don't.
they're trying to be careful in the use of salt, trying to do a minimum, and, it looks like they just throw it all over the road, in my opinion, but.
Well,
anyway.
the highway is loaded with it and has to because of the, traffic that goes by.
Mm.
So, and that goes right into the streams and everything else around here.
Yeah, well, that's a concern for Route
Mhm.
16.
Yep.
That, it follows the Ellis, which is
Yep.
for the water precinct. My question is, how far away from the Ellis do we have to have our groundwater protection district? And how does that, Route 16, how does that affect? So there are quite a few questions on here on that as to whether we can get it all taken care of right away. I don't know.
Well, I think you've given a very good start.
Yeah, excellent.
And if not, we can keep working on it and do it for next year.
All right, we do have a need to do the public hearings anyway,
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
because we have some changes that we're gonna make for the short-term rental,
Mhm.
and the language that was circulated that we received from Peter Malia
Okay.
regarding transfer of ownership of a property,
Mhm.
to require that a new application must be made by the new owner to validate the appropriate new information for the new property owner, and that they will agree to the affidavit and conditions of owning property with a conditional use permit. And so we need to do that. We have the language for that already.
Right.
And so we can schedule, and we can, I think, unless somebody tells me elsewise, we can cover both topics, if we have both topics to cover at the same public hearing. So we should go forward with our public hearing understanding of dates and make sure we get that squared away. And then it's just a matter of what, whether we have two topics or just one. So, be nice to have both of them. We can do it.
And the 3 short-term rentals, that's gonna be next time, right? Not this time.
I'm sorry,
There were
the,
3 short-term rentals, I
Maybe
guess, that
today.
came in, but,
We have them today.
oh, for today? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they came in late.
Yeah, I didn't have it on this here.
Yeah, it came in late.
Yeah.
Um,
Have we got a copy of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was looking at it today, but I didn't print it, of course.
all right. So any more comments on we're good. Sarah,
Okay,
you got the ball.
all right.
If you need help, holler.
Well, don't worry.
You need some blocking or whatever.
The best thing for you all to do is just read it and say, that doesn't make sense to me, or you really want to do that? So we can start getting points that we're gonna need to discuss then on our next meeting.
The one thing I did like that you left off was the exclusion or the exemption from residential. That
I
was-
figured, considering that that's the major use
Mhm.
here, that plus our ends in one ski area.
But the 5-gallon limit, I think, protects most residential people. That it won't impact that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Should,
And it's also,
If you're keeping more than 5 gallons of stuff around, you should be careful.
right. And you could have a 5-gallon container, more than one 5-gallon container.
Yes.
And attached to the model ordinance, there's a whole bunch of information, the appendix. There's one, the appendix, which is the contaminants, the known contaminants, and that's a federal list. Fine print goes on for pages. That's it.
all righty.
Okay, we have 3 here. The first one, many of us probably drive by all the time. It is up on Carter Notch Road. It was the former Carter Notch Inn, which is being changed into a short-term rental and no longer a bed and breakfast. So their application, they filled it out. Tax card, I mean, this one is interesting. This place has 9 bedrooms and a septic for 9. And that is, and they're advertising for, I mean, they could technically go up to 8,
For 20.
20.
I think it was less, a number less than that.
Are they
Yeah.
looking to rent it to just a single party or multiple parties at the same time?
That wasn't clear.
Was that ever taken off when that was sold, off commercial and put into residential? As far as the classification of with the building?
Well, it's in the rural residential area.
It isn't a residential, it must have been a commercial.
Right next to the Eagle Mountain House, I would think that whole area is commercial.
Well, it was commercial.
Mhm.
I think they may have, for tax purposes, made it residential. But I don't, the grandfathering, if you will, allows for 6 years.
So they
So
can put it back.
they can put it back to an inn anytime in the next 6 years and still be good.
But for short-term rentals, is where it's so large, would that be put back into commercial now in order to do that? For short-term
If
rentals?
it's residential, obviously the limits and the ability, they can't have multiple parties like they would for an inn.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, their ad says 16 is their
Yeah.
max that they're gonna rent it out to, 16 people. So I think they're targeting large groups to rent out.
And as far as the short-term rental, the residential versus village, that's the district that they're in. It's not their use. Because we do have commercial operations in the residential, and we
Yeah.
have residents in the,
No, basically, I guess I look at it differently. I think short-term rentals and residential, I use a commercial venture, but just my opinion.
all I'm saying is that the way we wrote the regulations was simply by district where they
Yeah.
were, and not by.
I think the fine areas is, previously it was a commercial inn. Now it's proposing to be a short-term rental operation. So we're basically saying that the precedents for grandfathering in the residential district
then, I can't remember, because as many times as I've been in there, does that have a sprinkler system?
Yes.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, they're fully all set as an inn. And you did inspections as an inn,
Yeah,
fire doors as an inn. They met all the
Fire escape.
requirements.
yeah,
Fire escape in the back.
Yep.
You know, for the second floor.
yeah,
The issue with them is they don't have somebody living there,
yeah.
so that's why they can't be an inn. So. This has gone in front of the selectmen quite a few times the past few months. So the tax card, I mean, 9 bedrooms, the ad says 16 is the max that they're gonna rent it out to. So they're underneath the limit. So, and everything else was in line, the application was in line.
Any other questions, comments? Motion to accept?
I'll make one. Motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion to accept, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Second one?
Next one is on Dismore, Road. This is in West Nook condos. Yes. Again, 2-bedroom, advertised for 6. Tax card, all that septic has all been cleared.
This is a condo, correct?
Yes, I think it's in the Nesselnup condos.
Yep.
I think didn't they come before the planning board and they were combining two condos into one? So they, if I'm remembering correctly.
I remember that too, Sarah.
Yeah. a couple years
Actually, they
ago.
advertised for 4. 2-bedroom, they only advertised for 4 people.
Okay. Questions, comments? Motion to accept?
I'll move.
Second.
I have a motion, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, next, please.
Last one is on Whitney Hill Road, 2-bedroom tax card, no septic on file. They're looking to start, they're starting to look to rents in January, so there's no ad in the paper. So it's one of those, they do not have an ad to go by what they're gonna add.
Okay, so we've had that occur before. And I think our precedent is that we can accept the application with comment to this Board of Selectmen to monitor the advertisement after the fact and do consider a conditional approval.
I believe that the owners of this particular property live right across the street from it, so maybe that's a good sign.
They purchased that just recently,
Yeah.
didn't they? Yeah, by looking at the picture.
Actually, my property abuts this. So I'll keep an eye on it,
We'll
Bill.
keep an eye on it.
All right. Maybe you don't want to vote. Just give you the option. I have a motion to accept.
A motion to accept.
Second.
I have a motion to accept in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's a motion to accept with the exception.
With the comment.
With comment, yes.
Where's Dick?
He's had his hat on the whole time.
Well, he took his hat off, but now he's placed it on.
I will put on the agenda that I didn't realize that the subdivision regulations was actually a separate document.
Yes.
So I was trying to figure out where we're supposed to put that numbering system, so now that I know it is a separate regulations, I'll go find it, I'll figure out where that should go. I'm looking through that zoning ordinance for subdivision rules and I can't find them and I'm like,
Yeah,
they're referenced in there. There's a definition for what a subdivision
for
is.
sure, yeah.
But-
Separate documents.
Separate, it doesn't say a separate document.
Well, maybe we should, is that housekeeping, where is it?
So, I have the language of that out.
All right, so you'll have that for really soon.
I wrote it, but I don't know where it's supposed to go.
Okay. All right, do I get a motion or not?
Dick?
No, he can't motion, he's not voting.
Oh, well then I'll make a motion.
Oh, I got a motion.
Then I'll second it.
All right, let's get it to go home, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
I missed that last night, Sarah. Joyce mixed up. She thought it was 7 and not